guys, God bless you and welcome back to my channel. So as you can tell by the title, today we're going to be doing a Q&A, which is where I ask you guys to ask me questions, and today I'm going to be answering those questions. So without further ado, let's get started. So before we get started, actually make sure to go and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and make sure to subscribe and hit that bell button to get notified every time I post a new video. Thank you. So the first question comes from Andrea Joy, and her question was, how did you come to know Jesus? So I've always served God for as long as I can remember. When I used to live in Puerto Rico when I was young, I used to go to church with my family there. And when I moved here, we kind of stopped going because we didn't really know what church to go to because we were so new. We didn't know anything about anyone or any place. I never told this to anyone, but I trust you guys. So basically, when I was young, I remember that one day I started reading the Bible and I started praying, and I've never done that before until that day. I was like, why not, right? And so that night I went to sleep, and I never wake up in the middle of the night for anything because I used to love sleeping. But for some reason this day, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I remember that I stood up on my bed and I looked to the corner of my room, and there I saw this bright light. It was almost like blinding, and I'm like, what is that? Like, it was super dark, by the way. Like, it was like past midnight, and I was like what is that? I was kind of like cleaning my eyes out and like, what? And I remember that it was an angel. And that day I went back to sleep, and I casually brung it up to my mom the next morning, and I was like, oh yeah, I saw an angel. And I guess my mom had asked one of her pastor friends, and ever since then we've gone to church. Unfortunately, I've started to go to church by myself for a long time, but now I thank God that my mom is also serving God. So yeah, that is how I got to know God and how I started to serve him. So the next question comes from Evan Smith, and his question was, what is your favorite Christian song / artist? Now, I don't have a favorite artist, but I do have a favorite song, and that is Oceans by Hillsong. That will always be my favorite song because a couple Christmases ago, my mom got me my very first keyboard, and as soon as we were done like eating our family breakfast together, I went right up to my room, and it took me about 2 days to learn what a piano was, what the key was, what the chords were, like what anything was. I didn't know anything about a piano. But that day, like, I remember it took me 2 days to even learn how to like form a chord with my hands. It was difficult, but I was ready, and I learned how to play Hillsong. Like, that was my first ever song I've ever learned how to play, and I did that by myself with YouTube. It was crazy. Like, I remember I propped up my phone, and every 10 seconds I would pause and I would put my fingers where he had his fingers, and it was crazy. But in 2 days I learned how to play a whole entire song while singing it. So honestly, I thank God for that, and that will always be my favorite song, Oceans. Patrick Lowe asked me, what is an unforgettable Christian experience / encounter with God? Honestly, I have so many, so I don't really know which one to pick right now, but honestly, that first one I shared with you guys is an unforgettable one for sure. But every time I just go to camp every year, it's always like wow. And yeah, so if you guys want a whole video explaining different experiences at camp with God that I had, I would love to do that. So just give this video a thumbs up and I will. The next question, and I didn't put a name next to this one because I don't know if I should shout that person out, but that person asked, why does his video only get 2 views? And honestly, this happens to a lot of people. When we start YouTube, we get so discouraged when we see that our video isn't performing as much as we would like for it to perform. But honestly, my advice is just to stick with it. Create content that you love creating, because the truth is there's going to be people out there who will love your content, but they just haven't found your channel yet. So a way that they will find your channel is if you continue to create that content. So because they can't find content that you're not creating, but if you create the content, even though you're not receiving as much notice as you would like to, just keep going. Honestly, it will pay off, and people who enjoy your channel will find your channel if you keep continuing to create that content.
Was that complicated? I hope that answered your question.
Okay, so the next question was by Lance Marinay, I believe you pronounce it, and his question was, when did you fully submit yourself to God? And honestly, I can't really pinpoint one specific time, oh, this is where I started to serve God. It was more for me a overall over time kind of thing. And yeah, it's always like every time I prayed was like it brought me closer to God. Every time I read the Bible, it brought me even closer. Every time I fasted, it was closer. Like every time I did something to get closer to God, it really did pay off, and that helped me like continue to submit myself to Him, to continue to grow in Him. So I hope that answered your question. So the next question comes from Stephanie, and her question was, what is something you just learned? And if you guys want like a full like detail as to like why I came to this conclusion, I will link my video right here so you guys can check it out. But basically, like my latest like teaching I've learned was that God really is like an all-powerful, almighty, awesome, and perfect God. Like He is a God of perfect timing. Honestly, I've always known that, but this latest experience was like, it brought it like over the top. I was like wow, like you really are. So the next question is from Markella, I believe, and she said, what is the biggest challenge with being saved? So honestly, the biggest challenge would be that you want other people to be saved too, and you're trying to help people and you're trying to instruct the people, but for one reason or the other, they just aren't they aren't taking that advice, or they aren't fulfilling their purpose as much as you would like for them to succeed, if that makes sense. So honestly, it would be that, because you want to see other people be saved, you want other people to have an awesome relationship with God, but not everyone puts in like the full effort as other people would. So the next question is from my really good friend Lisette, and she actually has a YouTube channel, so go check her out. Her name is Together at the Well. She has amazing videos. I really highly suggest them, so go check her out. But her question was, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a Christian YouTube channel? So my advice to you would be to trust God and to ask Him for guidance, because think about it this way. There are gonna be thousands of people watching you, right? But you don't know who is watching you. Like you don't know like, oh, this person is watching you. You don't know what that person is going through, but God does know. God knows what that person needs. God knows what that person needs to hear, needs to see. You don't know that. So you need to trust in God and just create content that He would approve of, that He is guiding you to create, so that that person who is watching you is filled by Him. But my second tip would be to think about YouTube as like a professional hobby rather than a job, because who goes to their job like wanting to have fun? Like no one does that. But if you think about this as a hobby, like a professional hobby, you'll want to have fun, because the truth is, editing is tedious. Like it is really hard. It takes a long time. But someone who thinks about this as a job, they're gonna be like dragging it. They're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like editing, like ugh. But if you're wanting to have fun with it, if you think about it as a hobby, you're gonna be like, oh, like editing, like let's do this. I really want to spend some time on this. You know what I mean? So honestly, number one, just ask God for guidance. Trust in God. Make sure that you don't think about this as a job, and make sure that you're just thinking about it as like a professional hobby that you enjoy doing. So yeah, so the last question would be from Laysa, my really good friend, and her question was, what made you decide to start a YouTube channel? And honestly, I've always wanted to do YouTube. Like ever since I was young and YouTube was a thing, I was like, man, like I really want to do it. So I feel like I've always had a desire for it. And at first I wanted to do like a beauty type thing, but now like when I became a Christian, I was like, well, why don't I put the two together and I help people get closer to God with things I like to do, which is creating videos. And honestly, I wasn't really going to do it, but I really thank my friend Lisette again. Thank you so much for the push, girl. I really appreciate it. You really helped me to be where I am today. To answer your question, it was really more of a desire I've always had mixed with like something I love to do. Well, two things I love to do, YouTube and serving God. And honestly, it was a little bit of a push by Lisette. So yeah. So now we're gonna go to the speed round, which is where I'm going to answer as many questions as I can, as fast as I can. So let's get to it. What are your biggest fears in starting this channel? So honestly, I've always just been scared that people weren't going to subscribe, that I was gonna just be like stuck at zero basically, and like no one was gonna watch, or even that they just made fun of me, not because I'm talking about God, but because they just didn't like what I was creating. What are your favorite things to do? I just love taking my dogs on walks or just hanging out with him in general, and I also enjoy exercise. What do you look for in a boyfriend? I always make sure that whoever I'm going to be potentially dating is serving God, and not just say they're serving God, but for me to see it in their fruits. I want to make sure that what they're saying matches up with their actions, and that their purpose kind of goes along hand in hand with my purpose and what I am going to do in serving God. Yeah. Have you always had to wear glasses? Yes, I am very blind without them. What is it like working in a healthcare center? Honestly, it's very fun, but it has its up and downs. What are your plans in the near future? Honestly, I don't have any specific plans, but I do want to continue doing YouTube. I want to create content as much as I can, and I want to just interact with you. As for like long-term plans, I've always had this like dream that I would create like a clothing brand for women and young girls, just for like modest clothing, honestly, because it's so hard to find modest or just good looking like appropriate clothes for Christians nowadays. So honestly, like in the far future, my goal is to create a modest Christian clothing line. What is it like doing YouTube? Honestly, I enjoy doing YouTube. It's fun, honestly, and it is time consuming, but honestly, it's what I like to do. I like creating videos and I like interacting with you guys. Thank you guys so much for the support. And last but not least, what is your favorite Bible verse? This one has been asked by a lot of people. And for my life, I would say that my favorite Bible verse has always and always will be Psalms chapter 9 verse 1. And actually, this was my favorite Bible verse before YouTube. It was like before like anything. I was super young when I picked this one out. And it says, I will praise you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all the marvelous things you have done. And honestly, it's just like, it's me in a Bible verse. Like, listen, like it says, I will praise you, Lord. Like, that's what I do. I praise God in worship, like actual like worship, and I praise God in music. Like, I'm not like the best musician ever. I'm not the best singer ever, but it's what I like to do. And more than that, like it says, I will tell everyone of all the marvelous things you're doing. Like with YouTube, that's what I'm doing. I'm telling people like, hey, like God is awesome. God is all powerful. Like you should come to God. I do that with my preachings and my messages. I do that just overall. So this is honestly me in a Bible. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it. If you guys have any more suggestions as to what you would like to see on this channel, go ahead and comment down below letting me know. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. As I always say, do not forget to remember to stop, seek, and believe.